Welcome to this presentation on the draft TNRD Parks and Trails Strategic Plan. Over the next few slides, I'll provide some background information on the project, where we are now in the project process, and what we have heard so far. I will then go over the draft plan vision, goals, and recommendations. And I'll wrap up today with some information on next steps for the project and other opportunities for input. The Parks and Trails Strategic Plan is intended to outline the future direction, policies, and actions for TNRD regional and community parks and trails services over the next 10 years. It aims to assess the current state of TNRD parks and trails, determine needs and values through comprehensive engagement, establish a vision and goals for TNRD parks and trails, make recommendations for supporting service delivery, and provide an implementation plan, including funding strategies and prioritization. So the project began this past summer. The first two phases included inventory and analysis and a first round of engagement. Using the information gathered from those two phases, we prepared the draft strategic plan, and we are now in phase 4, community engagement round 2. A little bit about the existing park service. There are currently 2 regional parks, 11 community parks, the Blue River Trails Network, the South Thompson Buoy System, and 19 undeveloped parks. The parks and trails are located on a mix of TNRD-owned land and provincial land, and some TNRD parks are managed in partnership with community organizations. Approximately 25% of all designated TNRD parkland is undeveloped, with development potential varying due to size, location, access, and environmental constraints. Parks and trails within the region are also provided by other levels of government, including municipal parks, provincial parks, and provincial recreation sites and trails. I will now go over what we did and what we heard in the first round of engagement, which was held in fall of 2024. So we had meetings with First Nations, held a variety of interviews and workshops with TNRD staff and other government representatives, hosted a series of stakeholder workshops with community organizations, and hosted an online survey which generated 315 responses. On the next few slides, I'll go over some of the key themes and findings from this first round of engagement. In the online survey, we found that just over half of survey respondents were satisfied with the level of service currently offered by Parks and Trails managed by the TNRD. Over 40% of respondents visit a park weekly. Access to nature was the most valued feature in most parks, followed by walking and hiking trails and access to water. Just over half of survey respondents were somewhat or very supportive of a tax increase to support investment in new or improved parks and trails. And there were concerns mentioned that parks and trails are not equally distributed throughout the TNRD. Key takeaways from the stakeholder workshops included that there are many active community recreation organizations working hard to plan, develop, and maintain trails in the region. Keeping up with maintenance is a challenge for these groups, and permitting and administration is also becoming a challenge. Signage improvements were identified as a priority for many groups, and accessibility, climate adaptation, and environmental protection were also important concerns. Big picture, some of the key challenges and opportunities that came out of the engagement and background analysis were related to volunteer and organizational capacity. For the region as a whole, beyond just the TNRD's parks and trails, volunteers maintain most of the trails in the region, and organizations reported feeling strained due to several factors, including volunteer numbers and difficulty with permitting approval and other organizational challenges. Serving a widely dispersed population is a challenge, and parks and trails are currently not distributed equitably throughout the region. Accessibility and wayfinding were identified as priorities for upgrades, including better signage to make TNRD parks and trails easier to navigate. And climate change is challenging outdoor recreation in the region through issues like extreme heat, reduced snowpack, and wildfires. So moving on to the draft plan content, the following slides go over the proposed vision, goals, and recommendations. The draft vision is for TNRD Parks Service to foster First Nations reconciliation through relationships and partnerships that promote Indigenous culture and values, grow and manage the regional and community parks and trail systems sustainably through partnerships and collaboration for the mutual benefit of residents and visitors. Create opportunities for people to recreate, appreciate, and steward natural areas while ensuring the protection and enhancement of the regional district's diverse ecosystems. Support community connections, health and well-being, and equitable access to the variety of landscapes and outdoor recreation opportunities across the region. The draft goals for the plan are to foster government-to-government relationships with First Nations, support local outdoor recreation organizations that build, maintain, and manage trails in the region, improve collaboration with nonprofits, industry, and other levels of government, establish management and maintenance tools to ensure the long-term sustainability of TNRD parks and trails, enhance park experiences for all visitors, and grow the TNRD supply of parks and trails. I will now move on to the recommendations, which are included under each of the 6 goals. The first 3 goals focus on partnerships and collaboration, and the first set of recommendations reflect the board's prioritization of reconciliation with First Nations. These recommendations deal with park policy development, opportunities to reflect Indigenous knowledge and culture, the protection of First Nations cultural resources, and the potential for park and trail system to represent Indigenous place names. The next set of recommendations under Goal 2 cover ways for the TNRD to support the local outdoor recreation organizations that build and maintain trails in the region. What we heard from these groups was not necessarily a desire for more trails, but rather for support in maintaining what already exists. So we recommend establishing a funding mechanism that could help provide funding for maintenance as well as trail planning or development. We have also included recommendations to support volunteer groups in other ways, such as standardizing partnership agreements, helping navigate increasingly complex approval processes, and establishing a resource library to assist organizations with information on a variety of topics such as accessibility, insurance, or trail standards, to name a few. The set of recommendations under Goal 3 are aimed at improving collaboration between volunteer groups, resource industries, and other levels of government. The first is to establish sub-regional trail working groups, building off successful models such as the Shuswap Trail Alliance Roundtable and the Blue River Trails Working Group. These groups can be a forum for collaboration on topics like backcountry access, funding, trail, or other recreation development opportunities, and can be a place to share plans and experiences that impact others at the table. The working groups could include First Nations, outdoor organizations, TNRD, municipal or provincial staff, elected officials from either TNRD or local municipalities, and natural resource industry or outdoor recreational industry representatives, tourism associations, or environmental organizations. The next set of recommendations under Goal 4 are intended to provide tools to support the TNRD in managing their park assets. This includes using an adaptive management approach and developing an asset management system. We've also included recommendations for developing park development and management plans for existing and future parks and trails, defining levels of service, using trail classifications, and developing park usage policies to help with ongoing management and maintenance. The last recommendation relates to updating the definitions of regional and community parks to help ensure that appropriate levels of service and funding are applied to each park. So regional parks are intended to provide regionally significant recreation, ecological, and cultural amenities that attract visitors across the TNRD, and these are funded through taxes from residents of all electoral areas and municipalities. And community parks provide passive and active outdoor recreation opportunities that are tailored to the interests of neighborhood residents, and these parks are funded primarily through taxes from residents of specific electoral areas. The recommendations under Goal 5 are about improvements to help enhance park experiences for all visitors. It includes recommendations to enhance universal accessibility where feasible, to better communicate accessibility considerations and to implement consistent signage across the park system. Some of the ways accessibility could be improved is through upgrading trail surfacing, adding accessible site furnishings, adding more frequent seating along walking trails, or adding accessible water access amenities like docks and beach mats. The TNRD could also provide accessibility-related information on their website, including descriptions and photos of surfacing, barriers, and amenities. And the last recommendation on the slide is for a consistent signage and wayfinding system. This will help ensure that residents and visitors use parks and trails safely and appropriately. Trail signage can be a low-cost management strategy that can help reduce maintenance considerations over time and mitigate human impact on sensitive natural environments. The recommendation suggests building on the signage system implemented at the Blue River Trails network. Goal 6 is about growing the TNRD supply of parks and trails. There are recommendations to develop new regional and community parks in priority areas, which have been identified based on an analysis of the distribution of parks and trails across the region, including both TNRD parks and provincial parks and trails. We're also included a recommendation for exploring opportunities for new trails networks in priority areas and exploring opportunities for regional trail connections. The recommendation identifies that the TNRD could lead the development of new trails or trail networks within regional or community parks, and for those trail networks on Crown land, the TNRD could work as a facilitator, helping build community capacity by connecting new trail groups with existing trail working groups to share knowledge. And the final recommendation deals with disposing of parkland that is not suitable for development. This refers to some of those subdivision park designations that may or may not be have development potential. So other activities during this round of engagement include this presentation, workshops with stakeholders, and outreach and meetings with First Nations, and an online survey that is open until April 14th. Following completion of the engagement, we will integrate staff and community and stakeholder feedback into the strategic plan and develop an implementation plan prior to presenting to the TNRD board for approval later this summer. Thank you very much for your time today.